The OCP Critical Facilities Operations Framework. This webinar will look at the functions called delivery support. We will start with an overview of the functions, share a lot of lessons learned with customer experiences, building those, and end with some final notes to consider when working with these functions. So the delivery support is part of the OCP CFOPS. It is the shared resources, you could say, that supports the site management function. There are a lot of things that are no point in really building up uniquely for each site or each small portfolio of sites. For example, a common service desk or the overall service improvements, where you can share across sites learnings, or a managed operating center where you have remote monitoring analysis to help you with, for example, predictive maintenance. And also supply chain and sourcing. The more that share the same supply chain and sourcing capacities, the better negotiation position you have with the suppliers. Let's start with an overview of the different delivery support functions. The first one is the service desk, and this one is a key functionality really. Having a service desk open and available 24/7 across the year is absolutely essential to make sure that you can get corrective maintenance called out, but also to have a quick response and reaction to potential incidents and so forth. It's also used for putting in service requests or change requests that may not be as time urgent, but having them collected in the same structured process and function helps you make sure you can prioritize and look at these when you have your governance meetings or review meetings. They typically are accessed through web, email, and phone. And they also provide the site owner and site management function access to service records. So you can see if they are requested, approved, executed, planned for or deferred or these kind of things. And also you can typically get access to the actual service report showing what was done and the results. So as I mentioned, it's an important part of the incident process. So it's important to make sure that this works well. The other ones that I will go through now is the governance function, which helps in the escalations and connecting the business continuity plans between the organizations. Even if this is within the same organization, this will definitely involve different departments and different units. You have the advisory services, where you look at the strategic parts and the risk management parts for the site operations. You have service improvements, where you have problem management, knowledge management, and the benchmarking services. Basically, to put it very simple, share knowledge with each other to continuously improve in a structured manner according to these functions or processes. You have the supply chain and sourcing, which is about sourcing services and site systems and site system components in a cost-efficient and high-quality manner. And finally, you have the managed operating center, which is where you have your assets remotely connected and continuously monitored and analyzed to handle matters before they actually turn into real events or incidents. So let's continue with the governance part. But before that, there is a custom experience of the service desk. So this is one of the customers stating that having a service desk available 24/7 is really vital for our site operations. It's so important to us that we have agreed a service level with penalties in case there is too long reaction time. So this shows also that you can put, of course, service levels on the service desk itself, not only on the technical work being delivered later on. Now, going into governance. This part is helping the different the site owner and the site management function and other stakeholders to collaborate and improve the services over time. Could be incidents, could be potential conflicts, but also the general running of the service delivery doesn't have to be any drama around this. The point is having this established while there is not any issues present makes it a lot easier than trying to sort these things out when there is a fire. So what you should look at is how to tie this in with the existing delegations of authorities and the business continuity plans for both the customer and the site management supplier. Because as an example, if I use Coromatic as an example, we run a lot of critical facilities for several customers. And of course, these customers need to be ensured that the business continuity plan for Coromatic actually is aligned with their needs. So if there is an incident at a customer site that we operate and this gets escalated, this is part of our regular potential escalation route for incidents. And that means eventually it leads to the country management and the group management and the board of directors. So for Chromatic, there's no difference whether there's an internal incident, if I call it that, or an external incident that affects a customer. By the end of the day, they all tie into the same on business continuity plan for Chromatic. And the same should apply, of course, for our customers. If there's an incident at a site or a portfolio of sites that we operate for them, this should be part of the regular business continuity plan for that customer. So any incidents there that needs to be escalated escalates according to the regular structures, not to reinvent the wheel. But apart from the business continuity plan, you of course have the need for tactical and strategic level meetings and escalations sometimes. It could be updates to agreements, or it could be issues that needs to be resolved, or it could be relationship management matters in general. And this is a matter of having these aligned. So who reports to who and what are the authorization rights for these different levels. So what can we keep at the operational level and what do we need to escalate to make the decisions valid? Some lessons learned of this is the handling of business continuity planning. And I must say, this is actually a quote from myself. This is the most impressive handling I've seen of this, in my experience, is one of the global ICT companies. They hold quarterly review meetings with all the stakeholders, and we're talking about between 15 and 20 different stakeholder organizations. And at those meetings, they validate the escalation points and contact details for all involved organizations with regards to business continuity management and incident management. So having a quarterly review meeting sounds very ambitious and very complex, but actually when you run this on a quarterly basis, even though there are these many stakeholders, it's not such a big deal, but you do capture changes in organizations and people who join and people who leave and so forth. So it's a really good way of doing this, and I would say consider best practice and something that should be considered by every organization to look at this as the guiding principle. Coming to advisory services then, what is that? Well, this is services that are added to the regular operations, if you like, regardless if it's site management or on-site services. You have other things that often are off-site services, for example, the strategy and site portfolio management. So what's the strategy for energy and environmental improvements? What's the roadmap for that? What's the financial analysis, business cases for investments? It could be a planning of transformation programs, which could be outsourcing from an in-house function, or it could be divesting assets. So a whole portfolio of sites may be sold off to someone and then either dropped completely or simply being delivered back as a service to the former owner. All these kind of things require quite some skills, both from a technical standpoint, but also from a financial and commercial standpoint. And also you have the site strategy for the coming 3, 5, 10 years? Where are we in the life cycle, and where do we expect to be in the coming years? And what does that mean from a sourcing perspective, for example? Risk management includes business impact analysis of site failures. How do we mitigate these risks? It's also, of course, compliance audits and reviews, business continuity and risk mitigation, and work that basically focuses on improving the robustness of the site, the technical robustness, or the organizational resilience. So all these things around risk management, from a high level, from a board of directors, for example, down to hands-on audits, technical audits of different sites, regardless if this is a hospital, technical infrastructure, or within the telecom or a data center. Performance improvements and cost reductions. What's that then? Well, you have sites up and running, and you want to get the same performance out of these, but with a lower running cost, perhaps. Or you want to have an improved environmental footprint while not increasing the risks of the site operations. So these kind of things where you decide what kind of performance improvement you're looking for, and then actually driving a change management program to achieve those, and establishing KPIs so that this can be monitored long term. Trainings, benchmarking programs, all these kind of things are other things. So anything that can improve the performance or reduce costs, often they go hand in hand. Those are change management programs that needs to be designed, approved, and committed by everyone involved, and then run over time to see the effects. Some customer experience there, a quote from a site owner which said that getting professional support from experts that not only understands the financials but also masters the underlying infrastructure has been essential in our decision to revamp our site portfolio strategy for the coming period. Because this is often a case of how often, I mean, if you're an organization where site operations may not be your core business, but it's a necessary functionality for your regular core business, regardless if that is a retail or a financial sector or whatever it is, how often do you actually work with that strategy around your critical facilities and how they should be managed going forward? That's when you need to bring in experts who do this many, many times each year and bring their knowledge from earlier engagements. Another one is around risk management, and here's a board member who says that, no, sorry, not the board member, it's a member of the group management team that says that risk management is getting more complex every day, and having advisory consultants help our board of directors to run the annual risk analysis and refresh our business continuity plan according to what is found in those risk analysis makes me sleep better at night. I think that's an important point, making sure that the stakeholders at the top understand the level of criticality or the level of dependency that most businesses or organizations actually have on these critical facilities. They may be far down in the technical layers and may be a bit abstract to someone not involved in them. But if the critical facility stops working for any reason, regardless if it's sort of a man-made attack or natural disasters or any other risks, it can stop or slow down significant parts of the organization's business. And that is important to have that understanding on the business impacts and then make plans according to it to mitigate and lower those risks. The third part is about performance improvement, and this is it's all about getting more bang for the buck, but it needs to be done in a determined and structured way to ensure the results really stay with the organization. If you don't do that, you end up with a project that creates a lot of activities and positive feelings, but the results fade away quite quickly. And that's the challenge for many projects, that they great job, great energy, and make some changes, and then people tend to slip back into their old habits. So when talking to the advisory team, what they summarize is they start by assessing the current state of delivery and to establish KPIs for measuring the wanted performance levels. And based on that, they drive change management initiatives to provide both quick wins, because that's important to show, but also to meet the performance targets over time and then keep them there by coming back with quarterly or annual audits and reviews to make sure that they are upkept or continuously improved if that's the targets. The next function here is the service improvements. The service improvements have three parts. The first one is problem management, and you may recognize that from other frameworks, for example, ITIL. And it's similar here. It's basically when you have incidents, you focus on resolving the issues as fast as possible. But problem management is the next level, where you look at the root cause analysis and make sure that you minimize the risks of the same incident or type of incident happens again. But also that you make sure that the knowledge of this is shared with other relevant stakeholders and parties, and not just keep that experience within the local team. And that's why the problem management is part of the service improvements, which is a shared function with other sites rather than keeping it per site. And this goes into the next one, which is knowledge management. And regardless if this is an in-house or an outsourced supplier of site management and of course on-site services as well, regardless if that is maintenance or security services or whatever it is, the suppliers should provide regular trainings and certifications of its team members, because gathering, analyzing, and sharing information across sites, and that may be anonymized, of course, not to breach any NDAs or non-disclosure agreements. You can still sort of have general learnings, if you like, through formal trainings and on the job trainings or a rotation between different sites and so forth. You need to continuously improve and develop the services being delivered. And in the OCP CFOPS, this is based on the Plan, Do, Study, Act methodology. The third part of service improvements is benchmarking. So benchmarking is when you assess the site performance against reference data, and that could be from other sites that are operated by the same supplier or within the same portfolio, if that's the comparable type of sites to compare with. And that can be run by advisory experts or by some other shared function. It could be the quality department or some other department like that. The important thing is that benchmarking is a good way. If you use the relevant KPIs, it's a good way to actually assess whether you are performing well or if there are areas to improve in, and then you can look at the knowledge management and learn from these benchmarkings and what can we do to improve these areas. This is very widely used, especially within our global cloud providers with their global brands, where they compare and match, continuously improve the site operations of the different sites with global benchmarking throughout their portfolios. We have some lessons learned there. Well, problem management is so much more than just identify the root cause to an incident. It helps us mitigate risks of having the same problem at another site. One incident was actually around defective fire prevention system. It turned out to be a valve for a particular type of unit that was badly manufactured during a certain period. So there was a batch of valves that was produced for a couple of months and of course had an install base. And it turned out that these were defective, and we were lucky or unlucky enough to actually be hit by one of those poor valves. But the problem management function helped us to identify this batch together with the manufacturer and then claim warranty exchanges for those. But not only for the site where the incident occurred, but actually in all the critical facilities we were responsible for. And the manufacturer on top of that started their own replacement program to help all other customers across the globe that were dependent on these valves. So it was a painful start, but a very successful outcome of that problem management situation. The next one is around the uh, learning and sharing experience through the knowledge management. So in this case, it's that we strive to leverage the expertise of our site operations team by rotating the team members between different sites at least a few weeks each year. What happens then? Well, thereby they can share their experience with each other and learn on the job what works well and not so well in different types of critical facilities. If you only work in the same critical facility or the same portfolio of critical facilities, you will have a hard time getting external influences and ideas from hands-on experience, not only sort of, let's call it school book training. So job rotation is an important part that should be striven for. And benchmarking then. Well, when this is an organization where they established a framework for benchmarking, and they were looking at cost and quality levels for site operations. So this was not just a cost reduction thing, it was about quality improvement and cost reduction, or making sure that you get the best quality for the costs. The operating costs. So here they use the anonymized data from other comparable organizations to see how well they were performing. And in this case, it was actually an operator in the financial sector, an insurance company, and their problem was that they only had their own sites to operate and didn't really have access to other companies in their industry. But by relying on an engagement where they set up a framework based on the anonymized data from actually more than 500 different sites that Cormatic Advisory has access to, they could see the KPIs that could be improved for their site operations without violating any non-disclosure agreements and without sort of processing any sensitive data, regardless if it's personal data or corporate confidentiality issues. So that meant they could raise their quality while keeping the costs under control, because they could see their cost KPIs, whether they were at a reasonable place, and also their quality KPIs where they could improve. So this was a good case. And this is something I would recommend, that benchmarking is always a good thing. And you can, because the point is not that you necessarily have to be best in class for every KPI, unless that is your target, but you can also start at the other end and see where are the KPIs where we need to improve first. So that means that taking an effectiveness approach or efficiency approach shows you where to start your improvement work. Then we have the supply chain and sourcing. Those two things are connected, because it's about sourcing services and products. And when it comes to sourcing or supply chain or procurement, if you like, it's easy to think that, all right, they just want to cut the costs, but that's not really what it's about. It's about having a selection of strategic suppliers with your preferred choice and having fallbacks and so forth, where you need to find a good blend or a mix of common baselines and help the suppliers improve where needed. This could be, for example, quality management or environmental management, but also naturally cost is part of this, as well as security requirements and perhaps corporate social responsibility with CSR and whistleblowing and so forth. And then warehouse and logistics, that's about supplying the spare parts and products or site system components for the critical facilities in scope. You can have local spare parts on site or local warehouses if you like, but you can also have centralized warehouses or logistics hubs with dedicated resources for the site owner. And this needs to be balanced depending on size and needs and criticality and so forth. But these shared functions of supply chain and warehouse and logistics are valuable in driving cost efficiency and quality improvements. Here's a critical facility that was delivered as a service, which means that both site management, on-site services, and all spare parts and asset risks have been contracted for a 10+ year period. The customer pays a fixed quarterly fee to cover all of these parts, and to ensure opportunities to improve margins, the site management function continuously consider challenging the suppliers with more cost-efficient options. So in this case, there was a joint project with the corporate supply chain manager, which resulted in an annual reduction of costs for technical cleaning with 12%, which is quite significant, even though this might not be the most costly service for this site operations, but these 12%, they can be used for increasing spend on another service perhaps, or it could reduce the operating costs and build funds to handle potential incident risks or other investments. The important thing is that it was a joint project here with the supply chain manager, and of course the supply chain manager considered this to be a project to be run with the supplier and the current and new suppliers across the portfolio of sites, also outside this contract, which actually reduced the technical cleaning with 12% across the board for this supplier of site operations as a service. So it was a win-win for both the specific customer, but also for the supplier of site operations with a critical facility as a service. The managed operating center is a shared service center where you have remote operations where you can monitor, you can plan, you can identify trends and actually predict what will happen. And in the most advanced operating centers, you can also remotely control the assets on site. So having the site systems or site system components remotely connected enables you to centralize the analysis and open up for drastically reducing actually the cost for maintenance and risk of incidents by monitoring analysis and analyzing the trends to have what is called predictive maintenance and making sure that you replace spare parts before they break, but not because of a scheduled plan for replacing them. So this is like a condition-based maintenance, but with an increased real-time adjustment. So that means, of course, you also rely on having a well-functioning supply chain and sourcing function in place so that you are able to source the spare parts or materials used in a good time. Today you can actually monitor and control most or all assets, even if it's an old site or a portfolio of old sites. You can upgrade them through upgrade projects and then get this functionality. But you should start with a business case to make sure that this is providing benefit to you, as with everything. So a lesson learned here is that with active remote monitoring, we've been able to reduce the amount of time spent on site. This has saved us transportation between different locations. which has reduced some of our costs, and of course the time of booking resources. But more importantly, it has reduced our carbon footprint, because we don't go to a site just because it's scheduled to go there. We only go there if there is corrective maintenance or if there is a need according to the remote monitoring and the trends analysis. So this is something to consider, that is not about cost reduction per se, or only cost reduction. It is also about the carbon footprint and resource management for the site operations. Some final notes on these delivery support functions then. Well, site operations should not be considered an isolated island. It's vital to assess what delivery support is available to the site management team and to ensure effectiveness in these deliveries. It could be fully in-house resources, or some of these support functions may be outsourced. The site management function may be in-house or outsourced, and so forth. It's about the functionality or the services being available, not who delivers them. But the key thing here is, of course, that they are shared across a larger set of critical facilities than just the ones in scope here. The broader support these functions can provide, or the more sites they support, the better cost efficiency, the broader experience, and the higher quality you will receive over time. And improvements in support functions are recommended to be based on the Plan Do Study Act, which is used also for the services in site management and on-site services. Hoping to have you on some of the other webinars regarding the processes and functions of the OCP CFOPS framework.